The sky grew darker than any night before as the first ships appeared over Earth. Their massive forms blotted out the stars, and their sleek designs suggested that they were more than just warships. They were predators searching for their prey, and Earth was their next target. Humans gazed up in terror at the sight of the vast armada filling the heavens. No one had ever imagined such an invasion could be real. The news spread across the world like wildfire. People scrambled to take shelter. Governments activated emergency protocols. Military forces scrambled into action. But it was all too clear that Earth had never faced an enemy like this before. The Zorathians moved silently and efficiently. Their ships made no sound as they cut through the atmosphere, their weapons glowing ominously and ready to strike any resistance that stood before them. From the ground, the city lights flickered and dimmed as air sirens screamed out warnings, but there was no escape, no hiding from this unstoppable force. In the distance above skyscrapers and mountains, the alien ships hovered, their engines humming with power. The human race was no longer at the top of the food chain, and they knew it. Across the world, citizens watched from windows and rooftops in awe and horror as the fleet settled into position. Some prayed, others clung to their families, hoping that somehow they would survive whatever was coming next. The military launched its first strike, a desperate attempt to show strength against the alien invaders. Fighter jets soared into the sky only to be met by beams of light so powerful they disintegrated the aircraft. In an instant, the alien ships didn't even flinch. Their weaponry was too advanced, too powerful to be challenged by Earth's primitive defenses. The realization sank in quickly that their strength was no match for this new power. As the ships hovered over Earth's cities, the Zorathians made their first move. A single pulse of energy rippled out from their flagship, and entire neighborhoods were engulfed in flames. Buildings collapsed into rubble, and the sky darkened with the smoke of destruction. The power of the blast was so intense that it sent shockwaves through the streets, creating craters in the ground where people had once walked and now lay lifeless. The survivors ran as fast as they could, but there was nowhere to hide, nothing to stop the coming onslaught. Humanity had been caught off guard, with no time to prepare for the full scale of the invasion. The Zorathian fleet remained eerily still as the devastation continued below. Their commanders could see the chaos unfold on their monitors, their ships firing in perfect synchronization. As their soldiers prepared for the next phase of their attack, they had calculated every move, and Earth was simply another conquest to add to their long list of conquered worlds. The humans had no chance. They had no way to fight back against such an overwhelming force. Yet even in the face of certain defeat, some humans refused to give up hope. They knew something had to be done, and they wouldn't let their world fall without a fight. But in the face of this alien menace, the question echoed in every mind: how could Earth stand against the overwhelming power of the Zorathians? What hope did humanity have now? As the Zorathian fleet hovered over Earth's cities, humanity's initial shock began to fade into desperate action. Military forces rallied under the command of the world's leaders, trying to organize any form of defense against an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. Soldiers scrambled to gather weapons that were hopelessly outdated against the alien technology. Fighter jets and missiles launched into the sky, but were obliterated almost instantly by the Zorathian ships that hovered just above them. The alien weapons seemed unstoppable. The skies were filled with blinding lights as cities below were reduced to rubble. Across the globe, chaos erupted as governments tried to unite their forces, but the sheer scale of the invasion left them powerless. Their communication systems went down one by one as the alien technology jammed signals and shut down military networks. The world's armies, once formidable in their own right, were now just pawns against an overwhelming force. In every major city across the planet, buildings crumbled and explosions lit up the skyline. People screamed in terror, running in every direction, hoping to escape, but there was nowhere to hide. The Zorathians moved swiftly and without mercy, their ships firing beams of energy that wiped out entire neighborhoods at a time, making it clear that no part of Earth was safe from their wrath. In the midst of the destruction, small pockets of human resistance began to form. These groups, composed of soldiers, civilians, and anyone willing to fight, tried to push back against the invaders. They took shelter in underground bunkers and rallied around makeshift weapons, organizing guerrilla tactics to strike back where they could, though these efforts were noble, they were tragically ineffective. The Zorathians had already begun their systematic destruction of the planet's infrastructure. Their alien forces moved with terrifying precision, targeting cities, power plants, and anything that could help humanity mount a defense. While some tried to rebuild communications with each other, others fought to keep order as best as they could, but it was clear the situation was rapidly slipping beyond their control. Humanity, for the first time in centuries, was facing extinction against an enemy too powerful to be stopped with conventional methods. Still, humanity's spirit remained strong in some hearts. The will to survive and protect loved ones burned brighter than fear. As the Zorathians advanced deeper into Earth's defenses, it became evident that humanity's greatest hope was not in fighting the aliens head-to-head, but in something else, something that had been hidden for decades, a weapon so powerful, so unimaginable, that it might be the only thing that could turn the tide of battle against the invaders. No one knew of its exact location or full capabilities, but whispers of its existence spread quickly. It had been designed by Earth's top scientists and military minds, something so advanced that it had been kept hidden from the public eye, and even most of the world's leaders had been kept in the dark. In their desperation, world leaders turned to this secret weapon, hoping it might hold the key to survival. The weapon was known by a few as the Dreadnought, an untested creation, born from years of research and human ingenuity, a behemoth designed for this very moment, a last chance to save Earth from the alien invasion. The Dreadnought's power and scale were unknown even to those who had created it, but in the face of annihilation, humanity had no choice but to place their faith in this unknown force. And so, as cities burned and Earth's resistance crumbled, humanity's last hope was set into motion. The Dreadnought would rise from the depths to meet the alien threat. Beneath the surface of the world, hidden from the eyes of the invaders, the Dreadnought lay dormant. Its massive hull rested deep in the ocean's trenches, a silent titan that had waited for the moment when the Earth would need it most. Designed by the brightest minds on Earth, it was a weapon unlike any other. It was a machine born from human ingenuity and desperation. Its sheer size and power had been kept a secret for decades. The people who had built it knew it was mankind's last line of defense, and so it had remained buried deep in the oceans, away from the prying eyes of both the public and any enemy that might one day threaten Earth. But now the time had come to awaken it. The world's leaders made the call. The Dreadnought's systems hummed to life as hidden codes unlocked. Its massive engines powered up, and its colossal weapons powered on. Its commanders and engineers, long since in hiding, took their posts and prepared to unleash what they had kept hidden for so long. Deep within the command center, as the countdown to deployment began, there was a sense of both dread and hope. Humans knew that the Dreadnought might be their only chance to survive, yet no one truly knew if it would be enough. As the final preparations were made, the Dreadnought's massive doors began to open slowly. The darkness of the deep water was replaced by a sudden and blinding light as the great ship rose from the ocean like a titan waking from a long slumber. Its sheer size was awe-inspiring. Its hull gleamed like polished steel, and its weapons glowed with unyielding power. The surface of the ocean trembled as the Dreadnought surged toward the surface, its powerful thrusters pushing it upward through the water and into the open sky with each passing second. Its presence became more overwhelming. The ship had been designed to break through the very fabric of space and time itself to meet the alien forces with unrelenting fury. As the Dreadnought breached the surface, the air around it seemed to crackle with energy. It was an enormous machine, towering over the skyline of the cities beneath it. Its guns, each one larger than most Earth ships, rotated into position. Each moment brought more power, more force, and more destruction, ready to be unleashed upon the invaders. Its engines roared with the sound of thunder, shaking the air and the ground beneath it as it ascended into the atmosphere. In the skies, the Zorathian fleet still hovered, oblivious to what was emerging beneath them. Their alien commanders were focused on their conquest of Earth, unaware that their victory was about to slip through their fingers. As the Dreadnought powered into view, the first wave of Zorathian ships turned their sensors toward it and began to lock onto its massive form. But the human machine was already moving at unimaginable speeds, its guns firing at a rate no enemy could comprehend. With one massive shot, the Dreadnought fired its main weapon, a beam of light so powerful it split the sky itself. The Zorathian ships were caught off guard as the beam cut through their defenses and tore through their hulls. In an instant, entire ships disintegrated under the onslaught. The Zorathian forces scrambled, trying to retaliate, but they were unprepared for this new force of nature. It was humanity's counterattack, and it had arrived with a fury that made the Zorathians realize they had severely underestimated their prey. Earth's secret weapon had finally revealed itself, and it was more than the aliens had bargained for. The Zorathian fleet barely had time to react as the Dreadnought's first strike tore through the air. A blinding beam of energy shot out from its massive barrel, racing toward the nearest Zorathian ship with the speed of a thunderbolt. The alien vessel, despite its advanced shields, had no time to deploy any countermeasure. The blast hit with a deafening roar, the energy so powerful that it tore through the ship's defenses like paper, causing the entire structure to crumble into a cloud of fiery debris. A scream of destruction echoed through the emptiness of space as the first ship fell. The Zorathian forces watched in stunned silence, their confidence wavering for the first time. They had expected resistance from Earth's military, but they had never anticipated such power. As the debris of their fallen comrades drifted into space, the reality of their situation hit them hard. The Dreadnought was no ordinary machine. It was something entirely different, something they could not defeat with their superior numbers or technology. The Dreadnought's weapons continued to fire without pause. Its guns roared, each shot sending shockwaves through the surrounding space. Every pulse of energy that left its massive barrels was another deadly strike against the Zorathian fleet. Ships exploded one after another, their forms disintegrating in a flash of light as the Dreadnought's relentless assault tore through them. Alien technology, once believed to be unbeatable, was now being crushed under the weight of human ingenuity. On board the Dreadnought, the crew worked with calm precision, their minds focused entirely on the task at hand. They had spent years in preparation for this moment, and now, as they saw the fruits of their labor, a sense of determination coursed through them. The war had only just begun, but they were ready. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, and they would not allow the invaders to win. The Zorathians were not their gods, and Earth was not their prey. Above, the chaos continued. The Zorathians scrambled to reposition their remaining forces, trying to mount some kind of defense, but it was already too late. The Dreadnought's firepower was far beyond anything they had encountered. One by one, their ships were reduced to scrap, their attempts to retaliate falling short. The invaders, once so sure of their victory, were now losing their grip on the battlefield. Earth's defenders were not as weak as they had believed. The Zorathian flagship, a gargantuan ship several times the size of the others, emerged from the ranks of the remaining fleet. Its commanders had seen the destruction unfolding around them, and they knew that they were the last hope for their species' survival. They ordered their ship to engage the Dreadnought directly, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy blasts in a desperate attempt to overpower it. A battle raged in the sky as the two massive machines locked onto each other, each trying to gain the upper hand. The Dreadnought responded with its own devastating firepower. The weapons on its hull fired again and again, each shot finding its mark. The Zorathian flagship shuddered under the assault, its shields buckling under the pressure. The human ship's superior accuracy and firepower tore through the aliens' defenses, and soon the flagship was in full retreat, its systems failing. Desperation filled the Zorathian commanders' voices as they ordered the fleet to fall back. The humans had struck first, and they had struck hard. The Zorathians, who had once believed that Earth would fall to their might without so much as a fight, were now learning just how wrong they had been. The battle for Earth had only just begun, but the invaders had already tasted the might of humanity's wrath, and it tasted like nothing they had ever encountered before. The Zorathian fleet was in disarray. What had begun as a flawless invasion plan was now crumbling before their eyes. Their ships, once the pinnacle of intergalactic warfare, lay in ruins, torn apart by the Dreadnought's unrelenting firepower. The survivors of the initial assault had no choice but to retreat into the depths of space, their once proud fleet shattered. Their arrogance had cost them dearly, and now the Zorathian commanders, high atop their flagship, were faced with a decision that would determine the fate of their species. In the command center of the Zorathian flagship, panic began to ripple through the ranks. The once confident and ruthless leaders now found themselves helpless against the overwhelming might of humanity's secret weapon. The humans were fighting back with a ferocity they had never anticipated. Their dreadnought had turned the tide of the battle in a matter of hours, and now the Zorathians realized that they were not dealing with an easy conquest. Earth's inhabitants had something they had not counted on: resolve. The Zorathian commanders exchanged frantic messages, desperately trying to find a way to survive the human onslaught. They had never encountered a species that fought with such desperation, that used every weapon at their disposal without hesitation. The alien forces had believed that Earth would fall to them with little resistance, that their superior technology and numbers would guarantee their victory. But now, with their ships in ruin and their morale shattered, the Zorathians realized they had made a grave mistake. Desperate, and with nowhere else to turn, the highest-ranking Zorathian officer made a decision that would forever change the course of the invasion. He ordered his communications officer to send a transmission to Earth's leaders. It was a message of surrender, a plea for mercy. "Please," the transmission began, the voice trembling with a mix of desperation and disbelief. "We beg you, spare us. We did not anticipate such resistance. Our fleet is decimated, and we are but shadows of the force we once were. We surrender. Please show mercy to our people." The message was sent out across the expanse of space, reaching Earth's military command. The Zorathians, once so sure of their dominance, were now begging for their lives. They had never expected to be in this position, to be on the receiving end of a mercy they had never granted to those they had conquered. The humbling of the Zorathian commanders was complete. On Earth, the message was received with disbelief. There was a moment of stunned silence in the war rooms of world leaders. The humans had expected the aliens to be relentless, to demand their surrender or obliterate the planet entirely. They had not prepared for the possibility that the Zorathians might be the ones begging for mercy. The situation was dire, but the prospect of ending the invasion without further bloodshed was tempting. The idea of sparing their attackers, of choosing mercy over revenge, began to take root in the minds of some leaders. But then, there were others who saw it differently. They had witnessed the destruction that the Zorathians had brought to Earth, the lives lost, the cities burned, and the suffering of their people. How could they forgive such an invasion? How could they show mercy to those who had shown none? A decision had to be made, but as the transmissions from the Zorathian commanders continued to flood in, one thing was clear. The invaders were no longer the threat they had once been. Earth had stood its ground, and now it had the upper hand. The question remained, would humanity show mercy, or would they finish what had begun? The transmission from the Zorathian commanders continued to play over the monitors in Earth's command rooms, their pleas echoing across the globe. The world's leaders, huddled together in emergency bunkers and makeshift war rooms, watched in silence as the message repeated itself, its words of surrender hanging heavily in the air. There was a moment of hesitation, a brief pause where it seemed like humanity might take pity on the invaders. After all, the aliens had asked for mercy. They were offering to end the bloodshed, to retreat from Earth in exchange for their lives. It was a tempting thought, the idea of avoiding further destruction, of saving what remained of their world without the need for more fighting. But as the reality of the situation set in, it became clear that mercy was not an option. The destruction caused by the Zorathians could not be overlooked. The cities that had been reduced to rubble, the countless lives lost, and the damage to Earth's infrastructure could never be forgiven. The invaders had come with the intent to wipe out humanity, to conquer and enslave without hesitation, To show mercy now, after everything that had happened, would be a mistake. The Zorathians had underestimated the will of humankind. But now, humanity had the upper hand. They could not let this opportunity slip away. It was General Maxwell, a seasoned leader who had fought in countless wars, who spoke first. His voice was firm, resolute. "We cannot show mercy to those who would destroy us," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "We have already seen the kind of threat they pose. If we let them leave now, they will simply return when they rebuild. We must end this once and for all. The cost of mercy is too high." There was a heavy silence as the room absorbed his words. Some of the leaders nodded, their minds made up. Others hesitated, their hearts torn between the desire for peace and the need for justice. The moral dilemma weighed on them all, but the reality of their situation was undeniable. The Zorathians had invaded without provocation, had attacked without mercy, and now they were asking for forgiveness. Would they truly be able to trust them if they let them go? Or would Earth be left vulnerable, a target once again? "We have to end this cycle of fear," General Maxwell continued. "We cannot allow Earth to live in constant terror of another invasion. We cannot let our children grow up fearing that one day we will be helpless once again." His words struck a chord with the other leaders. The fear of what might come next, the fear of the Zorathians returning stronger and more ruthless than before, was too great to ignore. They knew what they had to do. The decision was made. The Zorathians would not be granted mercy. The invasion had to be stopped here and now. Earth had already paid a terrible price, but if they showed mercy, they would only invite further suffering in the future. The invaders had already proven that they would stop at nothing to conquer, and humanity could not afford to allow them to escape. Orders were given. The Dreadnought would continue its assault. The Zorathian fleet would be wiped out completely, their ships torn apart piece by piece until not a single one remained. No survivors, no more pleading. The time for mercy had passed. And as the Zorathian ships, still reeling from the brutal onslaught of the Dreadnought's firepower, retreated into the far reaches of space, Earth's leaders made their final decision. There would be no second chance. The fear of future invasions would be erased in the fiery aftermath of the Zorathian fleet's destruction. The humans had made their stand. Now, they would finish what they had started. The command had been given, and there was no turning back. Earth's leaders had made their decision, and the Dreadnought, now fully operational, was poised to deliver the final blow to the Zorathian invaders. The skies above Earth were filled with the burning remnants of the alien fleet, the remnants of ships that had once been so proud, now reduced to little more than drifting debris. The Zorathian flagship, now crippled and retreating into the depths of space, was the last symbol of their failed invasion. It was time to end this once and for all. General Maxwell stood at the heart of Earth's command center, watching the unfolding battle on the holographic displays. The Dreadnought's weapons fired with ruthless efficiency, each shot hitting its target with deadly precision. The Zorathian ships, their once formidable numbers now dwindling, tried to regroup and retaliate, but it was too late. The Dreadnought was far beyond anything the Zorathians had ever encountered. Its firepower outclassed their technology, and its speed left them unable to defend themselves. The invaders had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. As the Dreadnought continued its relentless assault, the alien forces attempted to launch a counteroffensive. Desperate Zorathian commanders ordered what little remained of their fleet to converge on the Dreadnought, launching wave after wave of missiles and energy blasts. But the Dreadnought was built for this moment. Its shields absorbed the blows, and its guns fired back with even greater fury. Every shot from the alien forces was met with a crushing return strike that left their ships burning and broken. On the ground, humanity held its breath. The battle in space was fierce, but it felt distant to the civilians below. They had endured so much, and now they were watching as Earth's fate was being decided above them. Some stood on rooftops, gazing at the sky, while others huddled in shelters, praying for an end to the destruction. The war had ravaged their world, but now there was hope. The Dreadnought was their salvation, the symbol of humanity's resilience, and with each passing second, it drew closer to victory. Back in space, the Dreadnought's main cannon powered up for its final strike. The Zorathian flagship, now heavily damaged and on the brink of collapse, was the last target. The Dreadnought's weapons locked onto the massive alien vessel, and with a deafening roar, the main cannon unleashed its full force. The beam of energy tore through the vacuum of space, hitting the flagship with unrelenting power. The alien ship, already on the edge of destruction, was torn apart in an instant. A blinding flash consumed it. And then nothing. The flagship was gone, reduced to dust and debris. The Zorathian fleet was no more. The invaders had been completely obliterated. Earth had triumphed, but the cost had been high. The skies were now clear, but they were filled with the remnants of the war. Burned ships, scattered debris, and the remains of a battle that had shaken the very foundations of the planet. The Earth had survived, but the scars of the invasion would remain for generations. On the command center screens, the last of the Zorathian ships vanished into the blackness of space, retreating to the farthest corners of the galaxy. The battle was over, but the war had left its mark on the world. Humanity had fought back against a superior force and emerged victorious, but they would never forget the price of that victory. The world would rebuild, and the story of their resistance would be told for years to come. But for now, Earth was safe, and the fear that had gripped them for so long began to fade. As the remnants of the Zorathian fleet drifted in space, consumed by the final wave of destruction, the people of Earth slowly began to breathe again. The skies above were no longer filled with the ominous shadows of invading ships. The Dreadnought's guns had fallen silent, and the echo of the final battle faded into the void. For the first time in months, there was peace, but it was a hard-earned peace, one that had come at a terrible cost. The war had changed Earth forever. Entire cities had been destroyed, lives had been lost, and the scars of the invasion would take decades to heal. Yet, amid the devastation, humanity had risen. They had fought against an enemy far more powerful than anything they had ever faced, and had emerged victorious. The Zorathians, once so confident in their ability to conquer the galaxy, had been defeated by the very species they had sought to subjugate. It was a victory that would be remembered throughout history, but it was also a reminder of the price of war. In the days following the final assault, Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to begin the process of rebuilding. The Dreadnought, though instrumental in the battle, was just one part of the effort to recover. Nations came together to help each other, offering resources and aid to those who had suffered the most. The world had been torn apart, but humanity's resilience was stronger than any alien threat. The reconstruction efforts were a monumental task. Cities had to be rebuilt, infrastructure restored, and the wounds of war tended to. But there was also something more profound taking place. The victory over the Zorathians had sparked a renewed sense of unity among Earth's people. The divisions that had once plagued the planet seemed smaller now, as nations worked side by side to heal the wounds left by the invasion. The fear that had once gripped humanity now gave way to a new sense of purpose, a determination to ensure that they would never be caught off guard again. The Dreadnought, which had been the symbol of humanity's fight for survival, was brought to Earth's surface. It would be studied and preserved as a testament to what had been achieved, but also as a reminder of the dangers of complacency. The humans who had built it knew that it could never be allowed to fall into disrepair. They would continue to advance their technology, to prepare for whatever threats might come in the future, but they would also never forget the lessons learned from the war. As the years passed, Earth began to thrive once more. The memory of the Zorathian invasion remained a part of the collective consciousness, but it no longer ruled over them. The fear of alien threats was replaced with a sense of preparedness, and Earth's people looked to the stars with a new perspective. No longer would they allow themselves to be complacent. No longer would they be at the mercy of invaders. They were ready for whatever the future might hold. The victory had been hard-fought, but it had forged a new era for humanity. They had been tested, and they had prevailed. The Dreadnought's roar would echo in the annals of history, but it would also stand as a reminder of the strength and resilience of Earth's people. A new dawn had come, and humanity would stand tall, united and unbroken, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might send their way.